Well, I came out of the front porch. I said, you get out of here right now. And I gave a warning shot, Ricochet, and it went this way, and it shot that tree over there, and it went over here, and it went into the driver's window. I go, holy shit, Gary. That is not good. I've never seen it. That is a crazy bullet. He goes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. I said, do you think you hit a nail? Do you think you shot a nail and it ricocheted from that tree and went over here and went through that? And he goes, yes, I do. And I'm like, oh boy, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Okay, can you introduce yourself for me, please?
My name is Bruce Frederick Kimsey. I'm from Lewis County, Washington. I've been in law enforcement a total of 27 years. Sometimes I forget about a couple of the years because they weren't good. Some of the things that I'm going to tell you today are actually factual. Some of them is kind of ridiculous. Some of them you're going to think to yourself, is this guy serious? Well, these are the facts, and this is my story.
Okay, audience, in case you haven't realized, you are in for a treat because I have spent the last couple days talking to Bruce, and man, he can tell a story. So, with that being said, Bruce, where should we start? Who did you work for?
Lewis County Sheriff's Office.
And where is that?
Oh, I also call it Hazard County. And I really, because I grew up watching Dukes of Hazzard and stuff, and some of the places in this county is kind of like Hazard. Now, I got a body of like Bo and Luke Duke. And so when I was out there working the road, it was amazing. And I actually loved it. 2,300 square miles. It's in the middle of, it's actually the halfway point from Portland, Seattle. And the county seat is Chehalis.
Okay. I'm going to have you take your hat off just because it's shadowing you a little bit, and I think they need to see your face.
Well, listen, I'm nervous about my eyebrows. And actually, my logo is Bruce Frederick.
Yeah, you can hold the hat up. There you go.
And so I always wore the hat. Now, I rode a horse one time. I've been at rodeos. I had a cow one time, and I attended to some sheep. But as far as a true rodeo fan, I loved it. And I actually did a little bit of watching rodeos, and I'm like, those guys are crazy riding on those bulls. And I've rode on a lot of weird stuff in my life, which I shouldn't have. But it's a lot of work. But I love the hat because it keeps the sun out of my eyes and covers up these eyebrows. But you obviously like them. And I had to grow a mustache because I had so much thick eyebrows. It came with the family tree on it. Everybody had these eyebrows, so people come up and say, hey, you so-and-so's brother? You know, I'm like, yeah, how do you know? I can tell by your eyebrows. And so it's funny. Anyway, I grew up in Lewis County, graduated Napavine High School, and I go in the military. And
okay, no, wait a minute. So Lewis County, Washington State.
Yep.
We're in the western half of Washington State. How big is the county?
I think it's, I used to have the numbers down better, but I think it's 2,600 square miles.
Okay.
And it's a huge rectangle. I would say probably, I don't want to get political, but the most conservative county in Western Washington. Because anybody hears Washington State, they're like, oh my God, was he involved in them taking over the city, and all that? No, that's Seattle. And then you got Portland down south. And Portland used to be weird fun. And now it's just got weird. You remember when they said Portland was weird?
Yeah.
And so Seattle used to be awesome for us, when we go. Nowadays, I don't go north of Rochester, Washington, which is only about 20 minutes from my house. And so this county is very huge. The average deputy working the road is one sergeant, 4 to 5. There's been times where when I was a deputy, one sergeant, one deputy. I mean, it's just that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate in this career. For this county's not rich by any means. Most of the money comes from logging, agriculture, and I tell you, this past couple of years, it's been booming, and I know why. Do you want me to
Absolutely,
tell you?
yeah.
Starlink.
Really?
Starlink comes in, internet comes in.
Mhm.
You can live anywhere you want.
Okay.
And I've seen people move from all over, and they can live out in remote areas and not deal with people because they have Starlink and they have internet, so they can work from home.
Interesting. Okay, so tell me, I interrupted you. Where'd you grow up?
Oh, so I part of the personality and stuff, it comes from probably my mother, and she was. We grew up here, Centralia, Chehalis, Napavine, and as a kid, I went to Centralia, Chehalis, Napavine, Rochester, one stint in South Dakota, and we bounced around a couple times. And she was a fun woman, and I go, Mom, 5 times being married, what's going on? You know, what's happening here? And she said, Bruce, I never, ever, ever had sex with someone that I wasn't married to. And I said, quit marrying them. But I had all this influence from 5 different stepdads. And I was the type of kid that I was like, if a stepdad told you to do something, I did it. My brothers, you know, they fight the system. And so I learned how to barbecue quite a bit from all these stepdads. And, you know, it's really interesting because every man cooks differently.
Yeah.
And then you learn. And I actually enjoyed the stepdads and the humor. I had my own father, and he was a sweetheart to me. He was good, you know, and he was a painter. My mom did what is that called? You know, you work take care of older people in a home.
Hospice?
No, that's nurse stuff.
Okay.
It's more of a
just elderly care.
elderly care.
Yeah.
Not an easy job. Horrible job.
Right.
And now it's probably one of the biggest booming businesses in the world. Because the amount of money people pay. And
yeah.
Back then we were on government cheese. So if you're wondering why I'm wearing a tuxedo, because you told me that I want you to dress up and I can't wear shorts and a t-shirt. And when you tell me to dress up, I'm thinking, are we going to prom? What are we doing? And so I figured I'd wear a tuxedo for you. And trust me, I do have something underneath of this.
So do you think, I mean, you kind of alluded to this, but you had 5 stepdads. Do you think you kind of took a piece of each one of them? Where did the personality come from? Because you have the ability to just talk and just, you know, befriend everybody.
I think it really came from Buford T. Justice and watching Caddyshack and Airplane and all these dumb movies as a kid. And so I absolutely loved Buford T. Justice. And I thought he was the funniest, most ridiculous sheriff known to man. Now, I know they're fictional, and I know they are. And I loved Rockford Files. And I've used Rockford Files as a cop, and maybe we'll get into this. And I don't know if these people have this much time to listen to this much craziness, but maybe they'll enjoy it. But Rockford Files, he was so brilliant. And I don't know if I should segue. Maybe come back to the Rockford Files.
Okay, I'll write it down. All right, so you're growing up here in Lewis County. Was there anything when you were growing up that led you to law enforcement? Was there some? Yeah, so tell me about that.
And so that one stint when I said we're in South Dakota, I don't know. You bounce around so much, and so I kind of pick it by grades of what school I am. If you ask me, you know, what was your teacher in this grade and everything else, I couldn't tell you because we moved to so many different schools. But in South Dakota, 5th grade, and my mother's purse was on the back porch, and it got stolen in this Rapid City, South Dakota. And I hope he's watching this because he's like, that little fat kid became a cop? Oh my goodness. You know, but he came up and he investigated a purse being stolen. And so for some odd reason, he talked to me. And I wasn't the one that sold the purse. That's not where the story's going. But he just talked to me. And I'm like, wow, this guy was really cool. I mean, I doubt he solved the case, but he talked to me quite a bit, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, how awesome is that? And I thought, maybe one day that's what I want to do.
Huh.
And so from that point on, I was pretty serious about doing it. And then, when you want to do it, you want to get in law enforcement, your buddies are doing things that you probably want to do, but if you do it, one day you got to take a polygraph. One day you got to take a psychological. They were running around a little crazier than I was, and I was very careful, especially in high school.
But wait a minute. What age did you have that interaction with the cop?
8 years old.
8 years old. And so from that point on, you knew, hey, I better stay out of trouble because this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is being in law enforcement?
Yes, that's what happened.
Really?
It's very strange.
Yeah.
And I talk to kids all the time. What do you want to do? I don't know. I knew at 8. And why can't I met a doctor or an orthopedic surgeon or someone that worked for IT company? Just didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
And I actually wanted to really help somebody. And and really, as time goes on, I end up I go in the Army. I have to get out of here because I'm 18 years old, and nothing happens good from 18 to 21 as a male. Unless you're a goody two-shoe kid,
Right.
you get messing around and going underage in a bar. You get in trouble. It's just going to put you out farther. And out partying, playing. You're 18, you're 19, you're 20, 21. Once you hit 21, you can become a cop.
But before you go into the military, tell me this. You describe yourself as a little fat kid at 8 years old. Are you a kid who gets along with everybody, kind of the jokester, the comedian of the class? Are you getting picked on? Are you an athlete? Tell me about that.
Oh, I was I played sports. I played football. I rode the bench in baseball. And there's a guy in Morton, and I hope he watches this, because I had the full ride scholarship to go play, and I'm number 2 in the state of Washington in our league as lineman and defensive end. He was number 1, 6'6". I was 6'4". I think I was about 270. He was 285. And his 40 was fast, and my 40 was a 5'2". I think he was like a 4'9" at that size too. So my dad pushed me like, hey, you need to don't go to military. I want you to go to college, go play football, this and that. And for me, I was like, I don't know. Growing up with a painter, and a father that's a painter and stuff, I'm like, I know he doesn't have the money to send me through school. And, everybody knows how much school costs. And I knew I could go in the military, see the world, go travel around, which I am totally grateful for doing it. I'm actually loved that I did it, because it is goofy stories. Some I may not be able to say, and it was fun. And so, high school sports, I did that track thing, and they got tired of picking up those things you jump over, those hurdles. And I tried the javelin, and they got mad about that. And I did the discus and hit the one guy not good. The shot put was ridiculous. And then the baseball I liked. I could bat, boy, but I tell you what, that ball would come out to you when you're out there in that center field or left field or whatever. And it was fast. And I'm like, oh, this ain't for me. So I figured I better go in the Army, because and the football I really liked. Actually, in high school, my junior, senior year, I sold ice cream. And I got hooked up with this ice cream truck, that music. And I don't even want to put it in people's heads, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Hated the music. And what I would do, every time I sold ice cream, the guy would say, how do you do this? How do you make so much money? You're the only one out of all these guys. And I go, what are you talking about? Your percentage. He would go all numbers on me. And I would say, really, to tell you the truth, I go in these neighborhoods with all these kids, I'd drive around the block, and I would make all the kids chase me, and then I would stop at one spot. All these other ice cream people, they would go one, get out, and I didn't have the time. And I knew that by making them all come to you. And so, really funny on that whole ice cream thing, there was this biker in Chehalis, and he had one leg, and he rode a motorcycle. And his kid would come out to me every time, and I knew who this guy was. He was kind of a bad guy, and I would give the kid a free ice cream every time I saw him. And I was six, maybe 17 when that happened. He comes up later in life, that biker.
Wow.
It's pretty interesting. And when he comes up later in life, I go knock on the door, and this man opens the door, and he has a hatchet in his hand. And he goes, I don't know, can we cuss on here? Or what
Yeah,
do we do?
you can do say whatever you want.
And he's like, who the fuck are you? What are you doing? And that biker, he goes, hey, that's the ice cream man. He remembered me from high school.
Really?
And this guy that had the hatchet, I probably, at that time period could draw down and do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it so fast. He goes, hey, that's the ice cream man. And he's cool. He's good. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And says his name. And he goes, no, he's good. He's cool. And he goes, give my kid ice cream. Well, I knew there was a poor family and stuff. So, and I knew he was a crazy biker.
Yeah.
He ended up messing around on the freeway, chasing people and running them off the road. So I didn't see him anymore after that.
Huh.
But so anyway, I go in the Army. And I go into military police. And it is not easy if you want to be an MP. They want to talk in infantry. They want to talk to you all this other stuff. So I work myself in this MP. I'm up there in MEPS in Seattle. That's where you take the test and see these doctors. These doctors are about 90 years old. They're all wearing the white coats. And, you're in a farm of people. And it's a really interesting experience. And I'm from Napavine, Washington. 36 kids in my senior class, one stoplight. And I'm like, this is crazy. I have never seen anything like this. I would say 14 doctors, and they all look like they're 85 years old. I don't even know what they're doing up there. And, let me see your feet. Let me see your hands. Can you do this? Can you bend? All this goofy stuff. And so I end up and then I go to Alabama. And Fort McClellan, Alabama, which the base is shut down now because of toxic exposures. And at the time, MPs went there, and so did chemical people. And people that did the chemical stuff, the NBC.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what I'm talking about here? Nuclear, biological, chemicals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that base was that. Marine Corps was there too, doing their, I don't remember they called them, shore police or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe that's Air Force. But anyway, I'm over there, and I've never been in Alabama. I don't even know what I'm doing in this state. It was the hottest thing in my entire life. I'm sweating butter, and I think it's hot. And I loved watching the drill sergeants, and the drill sergeants were hilarious to me. I had an older dad, he would rip your ass and yell at you. And so these drill sergeants, when they would yell at these other people, these soldiers, I thought it was funny. I just got a kick out of it. And I mean, I could go on for hours about that. It was 6 months training and becoming an MP. And then I get out of there, and they ship me off to Germany. And I don't know where I'm at. This is interesting, and I'm young. I'm like 19 years old, and I'm over there screwing around in Germany. And I remember, I thought I was going to be an MP, and you're going to work a base, and you're going to drive around and play traffic cop, and never happened. I was combat MP, and combat MP does, I did a little bit, a couple times. I got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point, I end up working this town in Germany, and I think it was Wurzburg. And I'm with all these other MPs, and what they're doing is they're breaking into a CIF building, and CIF is clothing and military equipment like Apache helicopter. I'm talking, they are working the road as cops, and they're breaking into this building, and they're stealing these Apache helicopter helmets and all this crap, and they're selling it back. So next thing you know, I find myself working for CID, which is like the FBI of the Army. And so I'm this idiot 19-year-old, no business even being involved in this, undercover agent. And it goes on for months. And so like these CID agents, I remember, they're like, Bruce, you meet me over here. You meet me here at whatever time. And I'm late for formation. And so when you're late for formation, they make you do these butterfly kicks and push-ups and sit-ups and all. I get my ass handed to me. And they're thinking I'm just an idiot showing up late. While the same guy that's making me do it is involved in a theft. And so that goes on for a while. Then they, once they all get arrested, it's on Stars and Stripes newspaper. I end up getting shipped off to Bosnia.
But how was that time for you undercover? I'm assuming this is the first time you've ever done undercover.
No, man, screw that. I mean, it was nerve-wracking. Had a Beretta pistol pointed at my face, questioning me. I mean, the real deal stuff.
Really?
And if I find out you're going to tell on us, or something like that, or you're a rat, all that kind of thing, I'm like, man, this is crazy. Why do people do this? My whole dream, why I became an MP, is to become a cop.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a police officer. And I honestly believe a lot of people will call, if you're a civilian, calling a cop, I think it's slang. And I think if you're not in the family, you got to be able to say you're a police officer or you're an officer, that kind of thing. And I always believed the word cop was slang to me. Did you ever think that?
No.
I always thought it was kind of almost disrespectful if a kid said, you're a cop. And another thing I want to tell you, when I was growing up, my mother, I'd hear her talking to friends, and they were talking about the murder cases in Lewis County. In the 80s, it was just wild. I mean, and she would always tell her friends, if you're going to kill them, you kill them in Lewis County, and those cops aren't going to solve it. And that comes in later on one of the 1985 cases. So anyway, I'm in Bosnia, I do this stuff, and you talk to Andy Caldwell. And when Andy, who was getting off the airplane, and he was going to this, I think it was called Task Force Eagle or somewhere in Bosnia. We don't even know where we're at. And there's a line of troops going in and out, getting on the airplane. He was in the line coming back. Just random, weird. We didn't know each other at the time.
So, audience, Andy's episode will be right after Bruce's the following week. And Andy he served his career with Las Vegas PD, and now he's the chief of police of Chehalis? Centralia. Interesting interview as well.
Most states have a town called Centralia. I don't know why. Something to do with the railroad. That's really true.
Okay.
Centralia is a very common thing.
Okay. All right. So.
So anyway, I'm in this country, Bosnia, and I mean, I think it was like 7 million landmines in a country the size of Rhode Island. And you cannot drive off the ground. You cannot go on the grass. You can't do anything. You have to be on hardball pavement all the time because of the amount of landmines. And so I mess around with that, and then I go back to Germany. Then I end up in Macedonia. And in Macedonia, I end up, it was like 12, 14 hours a day, and you were the MP at the gate. And my job was basically to, come through, check your security card. Absolutely the most boring, goofy thing in the world. And what was fun is my sergeant at the time, he wanted me, I was a driver because he thought I was obviously funny. And he would make me and all the bosses drive. He'd make me drive them. So he would say, hey, go get the van. We're going to town tonight. And I remember how he said it. It was pretty funny. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I go get the Volkswagen van because that's all these people had, Volkswagen van. They could go 40 miles per hour. Worst cop car made in history. So I go get it, and I drove those guys to town, and they'd mess around in town, and it was pretty fun. And then, so eventually I get out of this let me go back to Germany, and I'm on my last 6 months. And this is kind of funny to me. I don't know how it happened or how I got mixed up to it, but that CID, the FBI, the Army is what I call them. They want me to do undercover drug work. And the sergeant that says, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go in this club, and you're only allowed to have 2 beers, only 2 beers. And you're going to go in this dance club, and you're going to do your thing. And, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, 2 beers? Are you serious? And so I'm like, whatever. What do you want me to do? I want you to look for hash sticks. I'm like, what is hash sticks? I have no idea. And I think the worst drug I ever saw was shake, marijuana, and what is it called? Cross tops. Back then, there was like a speed thing. It's what kids use.
Wow.
It was probably no-dose.
Okay.
And I'm like, whatever. I didn't do anything. I was pretty goody two-shoe because I wanted to be a cop. And so I'd go in this club, and I hated techno music. I mean, it was that bang, dang, 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 it was all. And, but this is where all these women went, and I'm young. And I'm like, hey, geez. And then they would start messing around with the 90s type music. And I'm like, okay, I can handle this. That R&B.
Yeah.
And so I'd spend the whole night messing around, talking to girls and playing. And then these Turkish guys would come up to me and they sell me these, what I called pepperoni sticks. And they were like this long. Have you ever seen it? You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, so I grabbed this and I'm like, what do they do with it? Kind of thing. And then I'd go out and I'd give it to I think they're called Kripo, and they're the secret police of the Germans, and they were drug narcotic guys. And I'd give it to them, and I'd go back in there and I'd dance with women. And I'd have about, I don't know, 8 to 12 beers, and I'm having the time of my life. So every weekend for, I don't know, what was it, about a year, the U.S. government paid for my beer. And I don't even know what I'm buying. Next thing I know, I find myself in these apartments and complexes with these people, and they have LSD, ecstasy. And so they'd have ecstasy, they had that acid tabs.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what it is. I have never seen this before. I have no education in it whatsoever. And I'm buying stuff, just left and right. And they would give me money, and I'm buying this stuff. And I mean, I bought mason jars of this crap. And I'm like, what is this stuff? It looks like vitamins, kind of thing. And I'd bring it out to them. And these people are so excited. And they don't know how I can do it. I don't even know how I did it. I'm just lucky to be alive after this goofiness that's going on. I'm so stupid, dealing with this. Because I mean, people die over this kind of stuff. This is a lot of money that would be in transaction. And so I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun, that was cool. And so I end up, they send me back, and I'm at Fort Lewis. Now it's a Joint Base Lewis McChord. And I end up working in a prison. And I'm an MP, but MPs can do corrections, and corrections can't do the MP for some reason. And I'm working in this prison with these inmates, and they're not allowed. I loved talking to these guys, and just BSing with them and everything else. And some of the stuff they were in there for was so ridiculous to me. And you basically you would sit into a barracks, and there would be like 70, 80 of them, and you had yellow paint around your desk, and they're not allowed to approach your yellow paint. They'd have to talk to you outside of it. And they're not E1s. They're basically less than an E1 private. And you'd have to call them inmate, stuff like this. And I'm like, there's actually some pretty decent people here, it's not all that bad. And you're not allowed to do cadence. And cadence, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm a steamroller, baby. That kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it when I was in the Army. It was probably my favorite thing, making my big ass run down the road. It was the cadence. And so I'm there, and I go, listen, we're going to do cadence, because you had to march them to lunch. You had to march them to wherever they're going. 80 of them,
Mm-hmm.
So here's this 21-year-old, and you're in charge of all these people for the day. It was a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah.
And and I really think in law enforcement, if anybody wants to get in it, it's not a bad idea to work in a jail environment, because you get to see some things you probably don't want to know. And then you also, if you do it in your community, you get to see how they interact. So while I'm doing this, I'm volunteering at the Lewis County Jail. And the reason why I'm trying to get my foot in the jail. Probably totally against the rules. And the reason why it's against the rules, the federal government owns your body.
Right.
You can't work for another government agency.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get in there, and I don't know why the captain of this whole jail thought it was a good idea, because I was getting out, in 9 months or whatever, and he was good with it. So I get out. Everybody remembers when you go in the date, and they always remember the date they get out. And I honestly believe that every single person, if they're not going to college or do anything, 2 years in our society would be good, because it makes us a stronger society. And you get to understand what's going on in these other crazy countries.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us feel, you come back, you're like, it's not that bad. We actually got it pretty good.
Yeah.
And so when I volunteer and do that, and I get, when I apply, there's 86 people, and I'm nowadays it's probably 10 or 15 applying, and then I end up getting hired, and then I become a deputy after the academy.
How old are you?
21 and a half, 22.
Okay, so you're still pretty young.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to go to police academy then. You've already been to a military boot camp.
16 weeks.
Okay.
And then I go to the basic law enforcement academy in Burien, Washington, which is a whole nother experience up there for a kid like me. And it's, I think at that time it was 420 hours. And for you people that are out smoking pot right now, 420 is not what I mean. I mean 420 as far as hours in the academy. And, that's kind of only the 420 people would understand that joke. And so I go to this academy, and I tell you what, this academy class was hilarious, people. And these guys are getting in trouble left and right. They're clowning around. They're not taking it serious. And I think it's probably because they're older and they're just not taking it serious. And I remember a couple times I get pulled in the office. It's like, listen, Bruce, you're actually pretty good in your academics, but you're kind of clowning around with these other guys, and it's not good. Well, I think like 4 of them got the boot kicked out of there. Remember one was Zillow PD?
Zilla,
yeah.
Yeah.
And he was hilarious. And I mean, he made me laugh. He was not a good influence. And so, but you're getting paid to go to this class, you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is back to the day where they actually made you do PT and everything else. And I just got out of the Army, so it wasn't that big of a deal for me. And so then I come back.
So so let me ask you this. You're essentially back where you grew up. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'm back I'm here in this county.
So how is it, because it's not that big of a county in terms of population, how is it dealing with people that you grew up with?
Actually, that's pretty funny, because you got to remember all the schools in this county that I've been to. So anybody at my age, I know, except for the East End. Morton, I played sports against them, but farther east, maybe White Pass, played sports with them. And if you go from Napavine to, it's called White Pass, and it's a big ski area, and there's a town called Packwood. I know all the people. And I think the trick is just being nice. And, there are times where law enforcement, these kids get in this job and it goes to their head and they're too aggressive talking to people. And I was just always courteous and everything. So most of the time when I dealt with someone I knew, they knew they were in the wrong and they didn't give me a hard time.
But why do you think that you were like that? You're 21 years old. You've got some life experience because of the military and stuff. But why do you think you had a different approach than some of these other people? Why do you think you were nice and respectful to people versus people that might have been a little badge heavy?
I don't know. Maybe just the way you're raised. Maybe that's how I grew up. And I mean, I think if you put, a uniform on another brother of mine, he would have been different. I think it's just how you're wired. And I always think, they always said you get more bees with honey, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, if you're sweet to people, they're going to be sweet to you. And I mean, not everybody. People are on drugs and they're all screwy.
Yeah.
So that doesn't always work. But I think it's just maybe the childhood and everything else, and maybe more humble with people in life, and I mean, I could have been that same young kid that's doing something stupid, and if I stayed here and didn't have an opportunity to get out of here, I could have.
Yeah. So, audience, before you've watched Bruce's interview, last week's interview was with Chris Peterson, and Chris is going to come in part here of one of the cases that you worked with. But tell me about first knowing about Chris, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I'm starting to think right now. I know I got a button that's displaced down here, and I think you're looking at my belly button.
Well, they can't see it on the camera, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, so I'm in 8th grade, and I'm in Napavine. I remember where I'm sitting, and I'm watching the TV show Cops. And Cops was really good back then because that's when they used to go in your house and they would do everything, and laws and things changed. And I'm in there, and I remember just sitting there watching 8th grade, and I'm watching Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, and this deputy has a cigarette in his mouth, and it's going like this when he's talking to this gal. And this gal is, I would say, she's doing things that are probably inappropriate with her body that's making money off of it. And she's probably about 5 foot. And Chris is a pretty good sized guy back there in those days. He still is a pretty good sized guy. And I'm watching him wrestle around with this gal. And I mean, her hands are flailing, and I'm not a cop. I mean, I want to be a cop, but I'm sitting there watching them. I'm like, just get her in the car. They're watching you on the camera. Get her out of here. And I think it's hilarious. I mean, I think it's really funny. And I remember seeing that. I don't know why it resonated with me and stayed with me all those years. And you fast forward and you go into later in life, and I'm a deputy, and there's an undersheriff. He was really good. And he saw, when I was a deputy, my whole thing was burglaries, death investigations. I loved investigations. And this undersheriff goes, "Hey, I want you to go to OWLA." And I go, "OWLA? What is that?" Oregon, Washington Lawmen's Association. I'm like, llamas? Oh my God, what does he want me to do with llamas? And he said, "Lawmen's, you idiot." Okay, lawmen's. Oh, it's just nothing but men's. It's a men's club. No, it isn't. It's from 1957. They never changed the name because of this reason. What is the reason? Why wouldn't you change it to Law Enforcement Association? Whatever. And so I'm at this, and what it is cops, detectives, basically detectives from Oregon and Washington would come together for a cop conference. And it was 2 days, and it was very good. And I learned so much from this 2-day conference. And I'm sitting there at this conference, the first one I went to, and I'm sitting there and I look over, and I think actually that cop conference was the first one was at the Red Lion in Longview, and it was a drug cop from Seattle, and he looked like John Bonnell down in Portland. He was a good-looking guy, silver hair fox, and he's talking about meth labs. I'm like, meth labs? What is that? I didn't know. It was new. It was coming on hot. And that time we were getting like 30-something meth labs a year in Lewis County. All over the place. Nazi method, which is a whole other conversation about different kind of meth, and we're not going to get into it. But I look over at this conference, and I go, "Holy shit, that's the guy." And I'm like, and he's sitting there, and he's wearing aqua pants. And the reason why he's wearing aqua pants, because I think he got pants from his wife, who's a nurse. And I always called him the Aquaman, because his wife was a nurse, so she could get, those pajama type pants those nurses wear. My wife wears the same stuff. Love them. I can't get them on though. I'm not saying he's wearing his wife's pants. I'm saying she would get them.
Right.
These medical pants.
Yeah.
Because he liked them. And I think at the time he was about 61 or so. I go, holy shit, that's him. And so I wait for a break, and I beeline over and I talk to Chris Peterson. I knew his name, everything. I go, you're Chris Peterson? And he goes, yeah, well, yeah. I go, my name's Bruce Frederick Kimsey, And I do my bullshit with him. And he goes, okay. And so I get talking to him more and more, and I get him out that night, and we get talking. And I tell him about 8th grade seeing him as a cop. Well, he's not impressed with the whole video, right? He doesn't find this that funny. And I end up getting to know him so well, he calls me still to this day his bastard stepson. And so that's how I met Chris Peterson.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk about later on. We're going to talk about a case that you did with them. Before we do that, and before we start talking about investigations, tell me how it was for you on patrol. You're finally out of the military. You get on patrol. I'm assuming it's much different than what you were doing in the MPs.
Yes.
So, first of all, do you have an FTO when you start?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You go through the whole FTO thing.
Okay.
I don't remember how many weeks it was. I had like 5 different FTOs. One of the interesting ones, this FTO was a Bronze Star Vietnam vet. And he was like really good. They used him because of orientation. And when you work in a county like this, there's all these roads and rural roads, and they connect to each other. And so he was good at teaching you about the roads. So he's the type of guy you're driving down the road, stop, I'm dead, where are we? He's one of those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And you got to tell them where you're at, or they dock you. You're constantly looking at street signs, you're constantly looking at mailboxes. I'm in the 3800 block of Harrison Avenue, I'm in 300 block of Stoll Road. You have to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I'm on North Military Road, and I'm walking. I get out of the car, and he's with me, and I think I'm in the beginning of it. And I walk to this house, and I'm in the grass, and I freeze, and I stop. I freeze. And he looks at me, he does one of those numbers. What are you doing? I said, I shouldn't be on the grass. And he goes, well, he's a Bronze Star Vietnam vet. He knows what's happening. He could see it in my eyes. He goes, you're in Napavine, Washington. Get your head out of your ass. Let's get back to work. And I'm freezing because the Bosnia, for some odd reason, maybe the stress of the call or something, and I don't know what's happening. And I freeze because I think I'm walking in a landmine.
Oh, wow.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so he was really good about it. Of course, he doesn't say anything to anybody. I mean, you got to remember, most, 70%, maybe 50% are military people coming out.
Yeah.
And getting hired in law enforcement. But I really liked him of how he treated me and stuff, on that one.
But so after you get off your FTO, though, it's just single man cars, right?
Yeah, you're by yourself.
Okay. Can you remember the first day? Can you remember the first whatever of rolling around just by yourself for the first time? Do you have a sense of excitement? Are you scared? Are you nervous? Tell me how that is.
Well, you're on probation, but as far as you got this beautiful used patrol car sitting out front of your house. I mean, you wash it every day. This is like a Corvette to a young man. I mean, this is a $100,000 Duramax sitting out there. You're going to be out there scrubbing on it, and I mean, it was probably used 8 years, kind of thing. Then they're not going to give a brand new guy a new car.
Yeah.
And I was so excited about it. It's so fun. You're wearing the uniform, these wool heavy pants that cost like $80, which is ridiculous how they've been ripping off law enforcement over the years. And then the shirt. And at that time we wore the same King County deputy uniform, which is they call it dark green. It looked brown with the light brown pants, the typical deputy uniform. And just driving around and, it was hilarious fun for me. I just enjoyed it. I loved it. You got to remember, you from 8 years old to basically 22, you're by yourself. It's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And I do remember the feeling of it. And I mean, I am jazzed. I'm so excited. I remember when I took the test for the job. I still remember this today. I'm in the shower and I said, Lord, I don't ask for much, but please let me pass this test. Please let me do good enough where I can get this job. And I remember doing that. And boy, I probably should pay him back a little bit for that. Pay it on, forward.
Yeah.
And so people that get in this job, good people, do it for the right reason. You always get people that do things for the wrong reason. And I was always about the right reason. And I cared about the community. I cared about cases. I cared about, even the dorkiest stuff. Your mail got ripped off out of your mailbox. Dorky stuff as a deputy.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like property line disputes. I did not like civil people arguing about stuff. I liked the cases, and so I focused a lot on cases. So if you had a burglary, I was dead serious about it. I'm 100% in.
Well, so in this county that you're working, you're on patrol. Can you work burglaries, or does that come later when you become a detective?
Nope. You took a call. You handled it from the only time a detective show up is a sex crime, death investigation, or a homicide.
Oh, wow. So from the very beginning, you're doing investigative stuff of what you want to do.
And they expect you to do it. You are like going to do it.
Interesting. So what was did you have a typical call, or would you just kind of get a plethora of all sorts of different calls?
I would say, we're talking about 99 is when I started.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you'd get 10, 12 calls. Sometimes you get 5, and you're hustling, you're juggling these calls. Calls keep coming in. You got follow-ups to do, and those follow-ups are theft third. You're in unincorporated areas of the county, these little towns, and they got a shoplifting case, and they call you. One thing about being a deputy in this big of a county, city cops, they get a call, they show up, they're still fighting. County deputy shows up. Where is everybody? What's happening here? Where did everybody go? And which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But I love to go in the city because when they got a call, they were on it. I also like when I was a deputy. These cities would have robberies. I don't know. Maybe this is not common. I'm not in Las Vegas. We're in a smaller community. But I remember one robbery, and it was this guy, and it was a robbery in a bank in Shales, and he gets on the freeway, and I'm just so happen to be driving down the freeway, and I'm there, and I'm watching this car just snake. I'm like, what is he doing? And he's snaking, just driving like an idiot. So I'm like, no one else around here, I don't know how far backup is. You're thinking you stopped this car. And next thing you know, a guy is out there pointing a gun. So I'd always take my gun out because, I was a bigger guy. We're quick draws on our hips,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd put it on my thigh. And I'd wear it on my thigh, and I'd just lay it on my thigh so I can grab it, quick enough kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stopped this car, and this guy gets out, and I'm out. I'm like quick out. And he gets out, and he puts his hands up, and cash is flying over the freeway. And I'm like, what is going on here? What is happening? It was TV movie stuff. And I'm pretty young. And so he comes back, I arrest him, and put the handcuffs on him. And I'm like, he's drunk. He's drunk. I mean, like drunk. And so I go, what are you doing? Drank too much at the bar, man. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, I was in a jam, and I went to the bar, and I had to get up my courage to do this bank robbery, and I go, hey, well, as deputy, you're gonna get in trouble if you don't have Miranda going on and everything. And just kept on talking, so I'm like, okay, whatever, keep talking. And he goes, yeah, he just got drunk. I just kept drinking and drinking and drinking. And he was too drunk to drive. And that's why he did that. And what happened was when he robbed the bank, he had all this money down in him. And then when he got out, it flew out of his shirt. It flew out of his pant legs, everything. And I'm thinking, I'm not going out there picking up all that money, am I? That's, I'll be out there for days. And a bunch of people came in. But there was a lot of fun stuff to the deputy stuff, being a deputy. And I loved being a deputy. And I did it for like 5 years. And we were dealing with these meth labs. I mean, these meth labs are like horrible. And we get into these marijuana grows, these aquatic, am I saying it right?
Hydroponic
Marijuana grows. And I'd get out there and they cut power and steal power and all this stuff. And I've seen some crazy stuff. And I couldn't handle that strong smell of that marijuana growing. It'd give me a headache.
Yeah.
And maybe because I was never, doing the old smoking the devil's lettuce is what I loved when my dad would call it, devil's lettuce. Did you ever hear that?
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was funny. And so I ended up going to detectives.
Was there always a goal? So even though you're doing investigations on patrol, was there always a goal for you going, hey, I want to get to X? And I don't know how your department was. Did you have a homicide unit? Did you have a narcotics unit? And if you did, was there a goal of what you wanted to do?
Actually, my goal is I wanted to go in detectives, and I wanted to be a detective sergeant. And there's a part of me that wanted to run for sheriff, and politics and dealing with politics and all this stuff. And so at that younger age, as a deputy, I thought about that.
But the detectives unit, did you guys handle everything?
So the detectives, it was an average of 5 or 6.
Okay.
And I saw when I got in there was a lot of the older, and they were called civil service detectives. They actually would take a test, like a sergeant's test, to be in there, and they were stuck in there. They couldn't get them out of there if they wanted to because it was union stuff. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
They quit doing that. And so when I got into detectives, I learned from a lot of these older guys that are in there. And I actually liked it. And, when you start off in a detective in Lewis County, you're working sex cases. So they got to send you to all that school. You got to learn how to interview kids and all that stuff. And extremely difficult stuff, bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I remember Lewis County had 570 registered sex offenders in the county with that kind of population. Well, like Riverside County, I talked to those detectives, they had 130. Riverside with that population, Corona, California, I mean.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy cow, what the hell's going on here? Is it the water? What are these people doing, these kids? And so I spent a couple years on that, and it's kind of like breaks you in, makes you a good interviewer. And I always thought that interviewing a suspect in a sex crime was easy. Probably the easiest interview you could do. Really interviewing people in general is pretty strange. It depends on the personality. You could I've spent 5 minutes talking to someone that committed a murder, and I've spent 3 hours talking to someone that did a shoplifting to get a confession or a burglary. And I actually found that kind of interesting. I spent a lot of time doing, going to training for interview interrogations, FBI interview, read, all this kind of different kind of interview training, thousands of hours. And then some of the other training I picked up was arson investigation, fingerprint, doing basic and advanced fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
Did not like it. The guy that trained me was the same man who did the fingerprints on the Unabomber case, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And that was in San Jose, California. The arson, I went to Emmitsburg, Maryland, to the National Fire Academy, put on by the ATF. And I didn't even know anything about it. But the reason why I want to learn about it, because I didn't know anything about fire. And, I'm dealing with death investigations with people in fires, so that's why they sent me. Hostage negotiator, put on by the FBI, and I think I'm 0 for 3 on that. Because what I would normally do when I was in a hostage negotiation, I said, "Hey, it's me. Put your ear on the window so you can hear what I'm saying." I'm just kidding. That's stupid. It's it's a stupid cop joke, so don't take that too serious. And have you ever heard that before?
No.
But it was, I think I'm 2 for 5 or something. And so I really got into, I started to be in the senior detective. So my job, then I find myself doing these agencies in Washington before they changed the laws. Multiple counties would go together and they would do officer-involved shootings. So if you were up in Thurston County couldn't investigate their own. They had to bring in Mason, Pacific, Grays, and Lewis, and maybe a little bit of Pierce or something, and we would investigate the officer-involved shooting. And the reason why is just keep it, neutral,
Mm-hmm.
And my job was always, talking to people, in the interview thing. In the detectives, I had one of my favorites. I had a couple and several of them actually over the years because I was in there for 12 years, which is pretty rare because normally in these law enforcement agencies, they like to rotate you out.
Mm-hmm.
Do 3-5 years, bam, get out of there. Put you back on the road. They don't want you getting burned out kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of negativity in this work. And for some reason, I ended up making it there 12 years or so. And during that time period, there was some cases that was pretty wild and crazy. And I think about the cases. I'm like, I'm like, does other counties deal with this crazy stuff? And I did have one case that I think about that came up. And it was in 2007, Christmas Eve. And that's what you're doing in law enforcement. You get called out on Christmas Eve. And it's not good for families and everything else. And they don't understand what you're doing. And so I'm out there in no man's land, an hour from here in Randall. And it's a case about 2 kids. And it was a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old. And what happened was I get a phone call from Corona Police Department and said, "Hey, we're looking for this missing person, this kind of thing. And this kid, he's supposed to be a runaway. We got a body down here." And, oh, okay. Well, I look up the case and it's a runaway. And I'm like, oh, boy, this is not good. And then he calls me back a couple hours. "Yeah, we just found a young man in a closet, completely brutally, horrible, nasty stuff going on here." And I don't know how much you want on this stuff. But like scrotum split and
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, and ears, his ears all messed up, black and blue, and he's been dead in the closet for a couple days on Christmas Day.
Mm.
So my job is to go out to Randall to this house, and I'm looking for this other kid. Apparently, if they kill one, they kill another. And what happened to these 2 kids? They get sent from California, Corona, up to Lewis County, Washington, into Randall to live with their aunt and uncle. And the aunt and uncle is wacko abusive. And it kind of reminds me of that movie Misery, which is just a crazy movie.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing to these kids is just complete wacko child abuse, like beating them every day, use them as slaves, beating them so bad they have to wear makeup. They put makeup on them when they send them to school. And so the one guy's name is Raul Serenana. And Raul, what his MO was is beat these kids. And he takes the one kid, which is my victim in Lewis County, and he slams his head against the bathroom wall. And I don't know this at the time, but I know it later. There's an ear imprint in the drywall. And the kid he puts him on the bed, then he goes down to the burger bar and has a burger with his wife. And so I go down there, and it is a disarray. Nasty, diapers everywhere, everything. And when you see diapers, you got to go through all this stuff. Garbage, everything. And I go into the bedroom, where the kids were, and I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I can see tiny specks of blood up around the ceiling walls. That time I actually had good vision. I didn't have to wear readers to read. And I'm like, oh boy, this ain't good. Because when you see that, I'm like, this is not good at all. I took every wall off the house. I bring in people, and I pick cops that were in contracting and stuff like that know how to take the walls off.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I don't know what I need wherever, I'm still looking for this missing kid. And I remember this brilliant guy. He was really fun. And he goes, hey, did you do a canvas? Yeah. Well, tell me about your canvas. I went over and talked to the neighbor, and they don't know anything. What do you mean? Well, he is from Corona Police Department. There is huge amount of population over where I'm dealing with. Your neighbor is a mile away. There's no such thing of a canvas unless he wanted me to talk to deer or elk. And they don't talk. They run away from you. And so I'm dealing with this house. And I don't know what to take. I'm going through the garbage, and I find a bunk bed. I'm like, why would we not take a bunk bed? Take the bunk bed. I'm finding pictures of the kid. I find a journal. And this journal I find from my victim is, it was horrible. And I think there's a TV show on it. And the kid is writing every day. My uncle was upset today. He was mad at me. I should have done this. It's horrible. And so going through this case, what happened with this kid, his uncle kills him, puts him on the bed, and he goes down with his wife, and we called her Jabba. And she was a rather large woman. And they go down and eat burgers, and they come back, and the kid's dead. Of course, the kid's dead. You've been beating him for years. And he puts them in the garbage can. And then he goes to Home Depot and buys concrete and duct tape. And he used the duct tape to tie his body up to get his body in the concrete. And then he obviously doesn't know how to do concrete, because he puts the kid in the concrete and he mixes it up with the kid in the garbage can. You following me on this one?
Yeah.
And he puts the kid in the pump house. Well, all of a sudden, this FBI agent shows up to the house, 2 days later, and he's knocking on the door. It's not really an FBI agent, it's CPS, because the kid isn't at school. The two kids are not at school. So they freak out, and they move. They move, and they take the garbage can with the kid's remains in it, and the other brother is still alive, and they take him to Winlock. And they're at Winlock, and they're at another trailer park. And I'm thinking, these sons of bitches. You keep on going to every one of these houses. I got to do more work. And so he's at this trailer park, and the other one's alive. And what's really interesting about this one, for some odd reason in this whole detective world, every time I did a case, I get these red herrings, and they're called psychics. And this kid is outside, and he touches this woman. And this woman is in her car, and she's the landlord, the management gal. And he puts his hand on her, and she gets this weird feeling. Because, I'm talking, I interview her after they're gone and everything. And she tells me about how she's sleeping at night. She gets these visions that the kid is encased in concrete. And she's thinking a septic tank, concrete septic tank.
Uh-huh.
They move out in the middle of the night. They're gone. Because the FBI agent comes back to the house. Well, it's CPS. They think it's an FBI agent. That's how dumb these people are. And they're on their way to California with the remains in a garbage can and the kid's still alive. So messed up. They rent a U-Haul and they pull a van behind it, and they put the garbage can and the young man's remains in that behind it, inside the van. And the aunt and uncle and the newborn baby and the dogs are up front, and the brother is in the back of the van. It's horrible. And they drive all the way from Chehalis to Corona, California. And they get to Corona, California, and things are going on. And the way this case opens up and goes up. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but when it opens up, it's on Christmas Day. It's a year later.
Wow.
And he ends up killing this other kid, Raul Serenana. I think the wife's name was Kathy, I'm pretty sure. And he calls 911. And he says, I think there's something wrong with my nephew. I just killed him. And he hangs up. And they call him back. And Corona was so unbelievably good that they show up and the cop comes in, and they had body cameras back then. And they walk into the house and they're like, what you say about where's the nephew at? No, I don't got a nephew here. I don't know. He changed his tune. And they do a search for health and welfare, and they find the kid dead in the closet, the brother. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why I'm down there dealing with California. And so all this stuff that I collect from the scene, you know, what's going on, everything's moving fast. I mean, it's carpet. It is everything from this house because you don't know. You don't know what's going to be important. There's garbage everywhere. But the biggest thing was the young victim's journal. And they made me read it in court. You like how I say made me? Because it's heartbreaking. It's sad.
Yeah.
And I read what this kid's saying.
Right.
And they end up convicting him on a death penalty case. And I think that is Serenana Morales. And I learned so much on it. And the reason why, I learned about testifying and everything else in that case, because you're dealing with 2 jury panels, 4 defense attorneys. I do have a funny note on this part, which it's a horrible case. How can you have a funny note? What happens when these cases, private eyes and defense attorneys come up and they always want to talk to the detective and go back to the crime scene. And so these guys have never been in Randall, Washington. And there's 2 defense attorneys and a private eye. And so I take them to the house. And I'm trying to get to know them. I'm doing my rapport building. I want to get to know these people. Because these are the same people that are hammering me when I testify. Mm-hmm. And in California, it's a lot different in Washington. They're a lot meaner down there. We know that. And so I want to get to know them. And so this man, I said, I don't got the keys. I can't get us in this house. And if you want, and we're outside and there's a window here. And I said, what I want you to do is put your hands on that window and slide up that window. And he goes, oh, okay. And so I go, I want you to crawl into and come out and unlock the door. And he's a defense attorney. And I'm like, this is hilarious. And so when he goes through there, the neighbor who's whacked out on drugs starts screaming and yelling, I'm going to kill you guys. You're over there. Well, he was what they call an African American in Randall, Washington. And when he puts his hands on the windows, he has his fingerprints. And so when he comes around to the front door and lets me in, this wacko, and he has a pit bull and all this weird stuff's going on. And I go, and these defense attorneys are watching me deal with crazy coming at us fast with the pit bull. And I diffuse it so quickly. I'm like, knock it off. Sir, you better back up right now. He goes, you don't call me sir, you call me ma'am. And I said, yes, ma'am. You get your ass back in that house, or your ass is as grasses. Start talking stupid to him because you got to talk crazy when crazy's coming after you. And so these defense attorneys are watching this, and they're freaked out. I mean, they're besides themselves. And I go, listen, I got to take a burglary report. I got to take fingerprints off this window. I think we got a burglary. And he goes, what are you talking about? Someone broke in this house, and well, I don't have keys. I don't know what you're doing. And so it's a rapport built. And I think when I testified in there for 2 days on the stand, they were nicer to me. They're like, Bruce, pretty good guy. He took care of that deal, and it's just being nice to people. Yeah. And showing personality. Yeah. And just being me. Right. Quit acting like you're a cop. Be a person. And I think a lot of them get mixed up with that.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You're on the stand for two days, and you and I had talked about, you kind of you were really good at interrogations or talking to defendants. But can you talk about getting murderers to laugh?
Oh, yeah. What happens is, and it's usually with drug people, and unfortunately they get mixed up in drugs. And one of the cases I got was, I show up, it was again in Randall, and I show up, then I get called out. They call you, they don't call you at 2 in the afternoon or 8 in the morning. They call you at stupid hours, and you got to drive an hour all the way to Randall. And so I show up and I see this man, and he is covered from blood from head to toe. And I'm like, what is, it was like Amityville horror, weird stuff. I mean, and he's screaming. He is out of his mind. Covered in blood. I've never seen that much blood on someone before. And I look at him. I'm like, he ain't gonna be able to talk for about 20 minutes. So I go talk to the man, and his name's Harry Gibbs. And Harry Gibbs had one right arm, and most people have one right arm, but he didn't have a left arm. And so when I'm talking to Harry, I said, Harry, what happened? This is crazy. What happened here? And he goes, well, Bruce, is what happened. These people came up, they're trying to steal from me. I think they want to steal my marijuana. And, at the time it's illegal, but you're better off saying marijuana than anything else to the cop. And I go, oh, okay. Well, I came out of the front porch. I said, you get out of here right now. And I gave a warning shot, Ricochet, and it went this way, and it shot that tree over there, and it went over here and went into the driver's window. I go, holy shit, Gary. That is not good. I've never seen it. That is a crazy bullet. He goes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. I said, do you think you hit a nail? Do you think you shot a nail and it ricocheted from that tree and went over here and went through that? And he goes, yes, I do. And I'm like, oh boy, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. So when they do that, you're like, okay, this is what we're going to have to do. We got to do a couple things, Harry. We got to do a video. We got to do a video reactment. And we also got to do an interview. We got to talk about this. Because you got to tell your story. So the thing was always get into Miranda. Miranda versus Arizona, 1960 something. And I'm sure those cops were mad about it back then. And it was always a game to get the Miranda in. Because there's two things that you could say. No, I'm not talking to you. And yes, I want an attorney. And those are the only two things. And so when you say that, Miranda, you say it as sweet as possible. And I said it slow. I definitely read it as slow as possible when I did a recording. And the reason why, no one could say I talked too fast and they couldn't understand what I was saying. Do you understand each of these rights to explain to you? Yes, yes. I'm like, oh, I'm in. And I was called Bring the Vampire In. And the vampire thing's kind of funny too. But he's telling me his story, and I go, holy shit. I said, you were like Sidewinder, shooter, saying stupid comments to him. And you get the, yeah, oh, geez. And when that happens, what occurs is the jury is going to hear this later. My job is take care of that victim. And she was dead in the car. And her husband was sitting in the passenger seat, and when he came out and shot her with this pistol, that's how he got all the blood over his body. And on the dash of the car, these deputies were like, what are they doing with corn nuts? Why is corn nuts on the dash? And I said, that ain't corn nuts, that's teeth.
Oh.
And I mean, it's bad.
Yeah.
And this is what you see and what you deal with in these cases. And when you look at it, you think it's corn nuts, but they're actually teeth because of the close contact gunshot wound.
Huh.
And so when it came to interviewing, I would love talking to them. I'm not working for Lewis County. I'm working for that victim. And when I did it, I wanted that victim to have justice. So I would do whatever it takes within the law, never outside the law. And I would make sure they're taken care of.
But part of the thing about getting him to laugh is it just makes them just not look great in front of the jury as they've just killed somebody.
Yeah, normal people that just killed someone that does a laugh or makes a snide comment or jokes around with the detective, and I've had it happen several times in my life.
Yeah.
It's building evidence. It's just not good.
Can you talk about your vampire theory?
My vampire theory is this. When I come up to your house and I want in your house, I would say something like, when we're doing consent to search, I would say, hey, I would like to talk to you. Can I come in? Would you like me to come in? And no, sir. What do you need? I said, I would like to have a cup of coffee. And so what it is if you invite them in, they're past the threshold. You go to jail. If you're behind the threshold, the guy has to get, or a gal has to get a search warrant. And I always thought of it as the vampire theory, because vampires can't come in your house unless you invite them. Same with law enforcement. You have to invite them in. And that is the theory. Which is stupid. I think I'm the only one that came up with that.
Can you talk about the Austin King and Jack case?
Morton. Boy, we got a lot of East Lewis County stuff, don't we? But it's in Morton. Morton's a pretty small town, and it's outside of it. Austin King's a young man, teenager, I think about 16 years old, and he's dating this gal. Jack is probably about 19, 20 years old. He's a monster man. He is huge kid. And he's in love with Austin's girlfriend. And Austin, these two love the same woman. Well, I don't know what Austin did or what happened, but Jack talks Austin to go way up in the woods, and he ends up, for something happened, and he punches him probably multiple times and stuff and kills this young man, and he's down in the logging road. And it goes on for weeks looking for Austin King. And I'm at the autopsy, and Austin had this, how engagement ring, that diamond?
Mm-hmm.
He had like that mark on his skull. It's coming to me a little bit, but he had a like, you take a ring and it went into the skull. And I'm like, wow, what is that? How's that possible? A woman with an engagement ring hit him this hard? And so I spent a lot of time with, what are they called? Radiologists?
Yeah.
One of the most interesting jobs in the world, sitting in the dark looking at x-rays all day long, making crazy better money than I ever thought of, but it's a hard job. So I go in there and I'm talking to the radiologist. I said, what is this? I don't know. Looks like doesn't look like it looks like a fracture of some sort. And they're so intelligent in the way they talk to you. I'm like, dumb it down. You're talking to me. Dumb it down. I always tell these professionals, layman's terms, you're talking to me. So I have to learn your job so I can explain it in a report.
Right.
And I can't use all your crazy big words.
Right. Because
we're in Lewis County. I need these words normal. And so, and then I do the canvas, and it's in a trailer park. And I mean, some of the most interesting things I found out in that trailer park, it was just like, oh boy, some of it comes back to me. Some people are dressing, and they should be dressing as a man, they're dressing as a woman, and then I find people that have rattlesnakes and stuff in their aquarium, and just off the wall. And again, here comes, you always run across red herrings, and it's a psychic again. And the psychic's telling the family that he's in a river down there by, all this stuff. These psychics, I don't know where they come from and why they get involved in my life, but they cause me problems. That one psychic I was telling you about with the girl, she was so convinced after they moved out of that house on that Morales case,
mm-hmm.
She sends her husband to open the septic tank licks and look inside. She goes inside and she takes a calendar off the wall that they left, which was really good for that one case I was telling you about. So that psychic was actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I actually liked her.
Yeah.
These other ones, they feed on the family and try to suck money out of them because I'll tell you where someone's at.
Right.
And I don't remember how long he was missing. It was several weeks or something. And then when I saw this Jack guy, he has his hand wrapped up. And then next thing, when I go to talk to him, it's unwrapped. What happened to your hand? Oh, I fell down and this and that. Long story short, he gets, when he punches this young man, he gets what's called a boxer break.
Mm-hmm.
And that boxer break makes that bone right here, and it turns it into a rod, and it punched him and left that mark on his forehead that killed him. Really, and that case was DNA because I picked up cigarette butts off of the logging road and everything else. And the DNA came back to Jack and Austin at the same time. Their DNA was in the cigarette butts. They're up there smoking and talking probably about something.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording. This is part of the most beautiful country in the world for about 2.5, 3 months when the sun's out.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time it is rainy, foggy, misery. How does that affect crime, you think? What's your theory about that?
I think it's a true good question for Dr. Stride. But I think, for me, growing up living here, I think I think it's October 31st. Halloween comes in, and here comes the goals. And the goals is the rain. Am I saying that right? Goals?
Ghouls.
Ghouls. And, you got me doing this so late at night. And so the rain, and I mean the rain and the rain and the rain, and it goes on all the way till about April, and then we get a week or two of sunshine, and you're like, oh boy. But during the rain and dealing with these cases in the rain is horrible because it's TV movie stuff. It's horrible. Sideways rain.
Yeah.
And I think it sets in some depression. I think it causes people, they don't want to get out of the house. But what's the difference in Phoenix? You got the sunshine blaring on you and you can't leave the house, but you got the AC, you got to hang out in the house because it's 120 something degrees. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think in Western Washington, you got to remember, you got Gary Ridgway, you got Robert Yates, you got Wesley Allen Dodd, you got all these weirdos.
Yeah.
I never heard any weirdo from Wyoming. Have you? Maybe they don't like the wind.
Yeah.
It's windy in Wyoming.
Yeah, you got to stay out of there.
I've heard a lot in Texas. I heard a lot in Oregon. Not bad.
Yeah.
Happy Face Killer.
Yeah.
California, we got plenty.
Yeah.
And a lot of sunshine. So maybe it's just theory stuff. I don't know. But I think there is depression. Not everybody gets depressed when it's killed people and run around and deal with prostitutes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just rain.
Yeah.
And it gets old. And, you deal with it every year. And you can't go out and you can't walk. You can't do things because of the rain. You got to wear raincoats and everything else. But look at Alaska. That's crazy cold rain, sideways rain up there. In the summertime, you think you're in the good, and the mosquitoes are coming after you, and the no-see-ums. So you're not really getting out of it.
Yeah. Tell me about the Marin case.
Marin. Interesting. Dennis Hadler. I'm in first 3-5 years as a detective. I go out every year. Your detective sergeant would ask you, "What's your goals? What are you going to do this year?" And I said, "Well, I'd always throw my burglaries in there. I want to solve 85 burglaries this year. I want to solve this and that, and I want to work on the 1985 Marin case." And I apologize to any family member out there because I'd always ask Dennis Hadler. Dennis Hadler is the son of Minnie Marin, the stepson of Ed Marin. His father passed away years prior to this. And Dennis, I go, how do I say the name? Is it Marin? Is it Marin? Is it Morin? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Don't worry about it, Bruce. Just solve the case." So that's how he would talk to me. He was the most famous logger in this area, in this region. Hired tons of loggers. And basically, in December 1985, his parents were kidnapped from their house. They went into the house, they ransacked the house, they went through all the stuff, and they were looking for money. The reason why, because they thought They are obviously have money because of the father, who's the largest logger in the area. And they take him to a bank in Chehalis, and one stays out with Mrs. Marin in the car, and the Mr. Marin goes in the bank, and he says, I need a withdrawal, because he tells him he's buying a new car. And he ends up getting $8,500 coming back, and then they take him out, I don't know, 5 miles outside of town off of a country road. And I think what happened was they're elderly. They're 80-something years old. They had pacemakers. They had medical problems. They wouldn't get out of the car. And it was cold. It was December 24th. Seems like we got something going on here with all this Christmas stuff around here. And so December 24th, they want to get out of the car. And because you normally would not shoot someone inside of the vehicle if you want hearing left, because, and they were shot, both of them, with a sawed-off shotgun. And you got to remember, this is 10 years of my life. I can't sum this story up so quick that we can get through it.
Well, to be fair, it's almost like a full circle here, because Chris talks a little bit about it on the prior week's interview, but it's also one of those things where, you see Chris on Cops, and here you are starting to work with Chris again.
Oh, how's that happen?
Well, not necessarily how's it happen, but here's the interesting thing. He's a PI at this point. He's not even a law enforcement, right?
Yes.
So how does that happen?
That is very, very, very unique.
Right.
And you're talking about a rural county, doesn't have all the money and resources, don't have enough. I worked this for 10 years. There's still homicides happening, like that one case I told you about. There's still, all these other cases I talk about, they're still happening.
Yeah.
And so I get assigned this for, apparently, and Chris went to this. Remember when I said I saw him at this cop conference?
Right.
And he was friends with that undersheriff, and he was a private eye. Well, he was also a retired Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. His partner was, and he had credentials that was good enough for the undersheriff to tell the father. Not the father, but Dennis Hadler, who was at the time the county commissioner.
Right.
So there's a lot of pressure going on. What are you doing with my case?
Right.
What's happening?
Right.
My parents' case. And, Dennis Hadler always said, I swear over my dead body that this case will be solved before I die. And so they get hired. Well, next thing you know, they're working with me. And so we're traveling back and forth to Alaska. We're doing follow-ups and cases, case work together.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an age difference between Chris and I, obviously. I'm a little bit younger than him. And one of my favorites is we pull up to Craig, Alaska, and we're up there. You got to interview witnesses. And this case, the people understand, is 28 years old, 1985. I'm 10 years old, so this is the same case that my mother would talk about, kill them in Lewis County. They'll never figure it out. And the amount of volume of books in this case file were, the books were like 4 or 5 inches a piece, 28 of them. And 2,000 suspects, thousands and thousands of tips, because back then I don't like sketches. I don't like sketches of suspects. Probably the best one, everybody liked the Unabomber one. The same one that did that Unabomber one, I believe, did this one. And it looks like every hairball logger in Lewis County. So every woman that's upset with a man is calling the tip line, said, you need to check in, and my ex, he probably did it, that kind of thing. And there's thousands of them. And so what I had to do is organize this file. One of the most interesting things in that case is when they did photo montages, they're black and whites. And they used, remember the miniature small little football cards, and they were like this big? They're small.
Mm-hmm.
Right over there behind yourself, you'll see a little O.J. Simpson. They're smaller than that.
Yeah.
And so when you look at a picture that small, and you're trying to see the face in blurry black and white, it wasn't good. And so what I would do, I would go, I don't know why I came up with this idea. I'm not the smartest guy in town. And I would blow them up into color.
Huh.
Well, you could see pits on a cheek. You could see eyes.
Right.
And I'd go back through hundreds of these witnesses. And the reason why there's hundreds of witnesses, because when they kidnapped them out of the house, they put them in a car. It was their car. Everybody knows Ed and Minnie Marins. Because if you're driving down the road and you're heading to town, you're like, oh, shit, Mom. It's the Marins, because they drive slow. They're old people.
Yeah.
And so one of the witnesses, he's going to a dentist's office. He's a young kid. He's something to do with his wisdom teeth. And his mom passes him. I want to say it was a VW van, which is ironic because of the military, and I do not like those things. And he looks over and he sees the Rife brothers, the suspects, in the vehicle. He, scared to shit, he doesn't say anything for years. And he goes to his dentist's office. He's on the drugs that they give you with your wisdom teeth. He goes back home. The mother makes a tip. I think you need to ask my son about seeing the Marin vehicle. Deputy goes over there. You know what I'm talking about when you do the wisdom teeth?
Yeah.
They give you something.
Yep.
My butt, when I got my wisdom teeth, I backwashed the pills in the glass, killed me for 3 days. So I know they give you something. I just couldn't get it down. Maybe woke up too early for the appointment. And so he didn't say nothing. And years go by, he ends up saying something.
Was there any hesitation working? I mean, Chris has this background with law enforcement, but it's fair to say this is very unusual for at this point, a private citizen, even though he has a background in law enforcement, to work with law enforcement. Did you have any hesitation working with him?
No, because I got to know him in these training conferences. You got to remember, this training conference is not like first aid, dorky stuff.
Yeah.
We brought in BTK Killer, Jeffrey Dahmers, all these detectives around the world. If it was a massive violent crime case, they would come in and talk to detectives about what to do, what not to do, what worked on a case, how they solved the case. Then you get some of the detectives get up there and talk about an unsolved case, and they get, I don't know, back then it was probably like 60, 70 detectives. Hey, why don't you try doing this? Why don't you try, take those tires down, and do, they give you ideas on your case.
Yeah.
You couldn't be an outsider. You can't be, they would always start off like, is there any media in here, any non-law enforcement, non-commissioned? Because it's secret squirrel information.
Right.
And it was hardcore, nasty, bad training.
Right.
And I mean, I learned how to be a detective from that training. I mean, I'm learning these cops are messing around with paint spheres on people's clothes, and they matched it up to a suspect, Gary Ridgway. That's how they got on and found out this is the paint. He worked at Kenworth, all that kind of stuff. So I really learned about that. And so on these montages, the first one I did we're talking about the Marin case. The first one was, the gal I'm talking to, I show him the montage. That one right there. We're talking 28 years later. This one right here. How do you know that? I will never remember the eyes. And so what happened after the suspects murdered the Marins, they take the car and they drop it off at Yardbirds. Yardbirds is like, back in the day, a Walmart. It was the biggest shopping center. My brother and I, we'd call it a daycare because our parents would drop us off and we would wander around there and look at G.I. Joes and all the animals. It was huge. It was massive.
Yeah.
Well, when they dropped that car off at the, was it Northeast parking lot? And the guy got out of the car, one of the brothers, took off running and looked like he was running with a shotgun. And so there's hundreds of witnesses on that. And so the problem with this case, we had so many witnesses, we had to dial it down. The trial went on for 6 weeks. Chris got up there and testified. Here's the funny thing, too. I don't know why I have this, but my job as a detective, sitting there for 6 weeks of my life, I had to sit and take pictures of every witness, because when you're a juror and you're like, okay, who was Detective Glade? Who was this? Who was that witness? You got people recognize faces. So when you have pictures of, and when the closing by the prosecutor was brilliant, and the prosecutor showed the pictures of all the witnesses. Okay, you remember this witness right here? It's 6 weeks. People get tired of this. They got lives and jobs. And, remember this witness, and they would show my picture and a picture that I took of people. I mean, and that was how many people? 110, 120. And when that case was over, I was so emotional I couldn't withhold. I got 10 years of my life wrapped up in it. It was a big deal.
Right.
And the one prosecutor on my right goes, "Hold it together. We're going to get out of here." And the way the judge read out the verdict, I think it was 100 and something years. Interesting one, there's 2 brothers involved in the murder. So when I did the search warrant to arrest them, the one brother, the day the judge signs to have him arrested, dies in a hospital up in Alaska. What's the chances?
Right.
Sepsis. Like bad stuff. And, not a easy, but bad stuff. And there's other cases involved. There's a sex case involved, which I solved, which had to do with 1990. The reason why, a lot of people don't understand this, the reason why they came up with this crime, because one of the brothers, he was married to a woman, and the woman was down in Arizona. They're estranged, of course, and she's involved in drugs. And she's doing bad things down there. She gets arrested. They put her in counseling, and she admits to picking up the brothers this day and seeing the bodies, and she could describe where the bodies were. Of course, they wanted to arrest them back in 1991, 92, and she dies. She dies from a heart failure. So the case goes cold. And what happens when case goes cold? Time. And I've always been, I just, let's not forget about the past and clean these part up. Then we can move on. And so at the time, what do we have? 8 or 9 homicides. King County has 600. I mean, we're doing pretty good in this rural area.
Yeah.
But I don't care. I don't want one.
Right.
I'm serious about the homicides. And that's someone's loved one. That's someone. These people were cherished, loved. These old people, the Marins, they were sweethearts. People loved them. They were pillars of community. They go to the Grange playing cards and everything else. Everybody loved them. They over $8,500. And I liked when I went up to King Salmon, and I liked taking this partner of mine, and he was a SWAT cop type, and Chris Peterson's with me. Chris Peterson, and you always take a prosecutor, because prosecutor can read your search warrant real quick and say, yeah, nah, change that, put that in there. They're like hanging out with a substitute teacher, and this prosecutor's brilliant. And then, and I have no problem saying his name, is Will Halstead. And then my other, I always rolled with a SWAT guy. And the reason why, because, jovial Bruce Kimsey, walks in, what the fuck, who cares? And just having fun. And I needed a guy who's thinking about safety. We got a prosecutor, we got a prosecutor, we got all these other people. And Dan Reardon was my SWAT guy. And he would come in, clear the house, clear this, make sure it's safe. So when I go to this Rick Rife and this 85 murder case, I'm in King Salmon, Alaska, and I'm like, it is interesting place. And this is Aleutian Chains, where you were way out there. And we get off the plane, and we got to get a rental car. And so when I go to the rental car place, they said, hey, don't worry about it. The van's at the airport. Where's the keys? It's in the visor. And we get in this minivan, and Chris is with me. And Chris is like, I've never got a rental car like this. And so we caravan out to this house. And the house is, I walk up and I see beer cans outside, a hatchet and all this stuff. And I knock on the door. And I'm like, And, Dan's like, he's ready for World War III thing, and I'm like, just kind of, whatever, let's get this guy going. And so when I interview him, when I knock on the door, he goes, who the F is it? And I'm like, like, Dan, we talked to him, let's get this going. And Dan's like, Dan, Lewis County Sheriff. What? Lewis? I still say Lewis County, you idiot. And then the state trooper. I traveled with the Cold Case Files state trooper too, and he was cool. And he would say who he was, Alaska, state trooper. Let's not say Lewis County. That's dumb. And so we go in, and he's sitting in a chair filled with tobacco smoke. I mean, smoking like chain smoking left and right. And so I get interviewing him, and it's not going well. He is not talking very much. And long story short, we sit and talk to him. Chris talks to him. I talk to him. And I'm like, we're in the castle. Interviewing a man in the castle is not a good idea, but we don't have no choice. And one of the things about a very famous case, the cops got frustrated, and they're like, let's intimidate him, book him, put the fingerprints. Yeah, and he lawyered up. And it's the same guy that couldn't fit a glove on his hand.
Mm.
It's really interesting on that interview with that case on him. And I learned that from watching these other cases. Do not do it. Take the time, build a rapport, speak to people, use your words. And so, basically, the trooper goes, you got an arrest warrant for your arrest, stand up, put your hands behind your back, reads off all, murder 1, robbery 1, kidnapping 1, all these charges. And turns out, he says, all right, sounds like I need my medications. Most people freak out when this happens. And some of the dorky, funny things with him on the way back, we're on an airplane, and he goes, hey, I go, and I love talking to people on airplanes because I did extraditions. I'm already through Miranda, everything.
Right.
I go, hey, did you ever think they'd ever come back and arrest you? Yeah, I thought sooner or later. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a confession. That's a statement. Something like that. He made a comment like, yeah, not, sooner or later you guys will be back. Something like that.
Huh.
And then he tells me a joke. And he's smoking a cigarette, and he goes, come on, man, buy me some cigarettes. Well, you buy cigarettes. What do you want? I want Winston's. I go, do you want what kind of Winston's? I don't know what you want. And this is it's kind of funny. He goes, I want those. I like my cigarettes like I want my women, no tampons. Okay, you just got arrested for murder 1, robbery 1, and you're telling a stupid joke to the detective? Not good. They would not let me tell that joke in court that he told me, and I thought it was damning. It's not normal.
Right.
And I go, what do you want to eat? Get over there and give me a burger. What kind of burger? I don't know. I don't want any onions on it. I don't care. No cheese. He'd say stuff like that to me.
Yeah.
And he was horrible, badass back in the day, and he changed his life apparently because he got married again and everything else. But he was probably 21, 22 when he committed that murder. He was young.
Right.
Sex crime happened in his 20s too, with a family member.
So you worked with Chris on this, and you kind of established a real rapport. Can you talk about convincing the people in the bar about what he did for a living?
God. Oh, you want the silly stuff.
Well, so, he told me that you could sell ice to an Eskimo. That's what he told me.
So one time when Chris and I show up to Craig, Alaska, the airport loses luggage. And this is when he becomes Aquaman, because he has no luggage. And it's 3 of us at this one interview in Craig, Alaska, and it's a small town. And he's wearing those aqua pants, those with a white T-shirt. And I go, Chris, and I was telling you, where's our rental car? What are we doing here? And they're like, I don't know. I thought you got a rental car. Well, there's no such thing as a rental car in Craig, Alaska. So I go, come on. And I go down to the docks, where the people are fishing, and I see a city rig. And it looked like a 1994 pickup maroon. And I go up to the guy. He's about ready to get in. I go, hey, give him my badge. I said, sir, I'd like to commandeer this vehicle. We need a ride to the PD. And he goes, what do you got to trade? I said, oh. I said, I got $5. No, what do you got to trade? And I go, Chris, what do you got to trade? He goes, I only got luggage. What are you talking about? So I go, oh, I don't know. Let me dig around here. And I probably got a knife in my pocket or, something like that. He goes, I'll give you a ride, but you find me something to trade. And I'm like, this is a city worker. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So I got this picture still to this day. I got to find it, though. It's hilarious. And so Chris jumps in the truck, and it's a front cab. He's a big guy, and I take a picture of him sitting next to the driver, and I sit in, and we get a ride to the police department so we can talk to the chief, so we can get a driver to drive us around. And I'm like, how do we show up here? And so that night we get done interviewing all these weirdos, and I'm like, Chris, where are we staying? I don't know. I thought you'd have a hotel. Oh my gosh. Oh boy. And I call the chief, wake him up again or something. And they put us in this hotel above a laundromat. And I walk into my room and the bed's not made. And I'm like, oh boy. But we're so exhausted, tired. We're using all of our words all day long. And I'm like, hey boy, this ain't good. So I'm like, what do you do? Sleep on top of the blanket or go under the blanket? What do you sleep in the sheets? What do you do? This is weird. I don't know if anybody's rented a room and the bed's not made. That means someone else slept in there. And then in the morning I get up. This is kind of side note, stupid stuff. I get up in the morning and I go into the bathroom and I look in the shower and I'm like, oh my God. And I have no flip-flops and it's covered in blood. Like, are they cleaning salmon in here? What's going on? What's happening? And I am, big men have to shower daily or bad things happen when you're walking because it's called jock itch. We don't mess around with it. We take showers. And I'm like, hey, boy, this ain't good. And I'm like, okay, rinse it out, rinse it out, rinse it out. Oh, boy. Rinse it out, rinse it out. And I end up kind of tippy-toeing in there to try to take a shower. It was the disgusting. It isn't like you can get home in 20 minutes, man. Yeah. We are way out there in no man's land. And I'm thinking, ew. I was always good about making sure they booked us a room before we left. After that. And, okay, Chris, and what?
Where you convince the people in the bar what Chris does for a living.
Okay, this is kind of dorky. And apparently you get a little serious stuff and then you get the goofy stuff.
Yeah.
And so this one is, when you're up there in Alaska, everybody's up there fishing. And we were in Ketchikan at some lodge. And because we actually had a place to stay this time. And so every man would come up to you, hey, where you guys fishing tomorrow, And I'm like, oh boy, what? We're up here, we're two detectives working on a 1985 homicide case, and, you don't say that. Everybody knows everybody in these small towns you go to. And so I said, well, Chris, my friend here, he's a horse jockey. And what happened, he fell down and broke his leg and gained quite a bit of weight. And we're up here because he always wanted to see the wilderness because he thinks he's dying. And he wants to be a horse jockey again. I try to convince him, so I think it's good that he comes out. We go, just wander around the trees and look at, the wilderness. And the name of his horse was, oh my God. And to see Chris, you'll know what I'm talking about. He's my size of a man, and so they're like, geez, oh, okay. And these guys will wander off because you don't say it to them, in a smiling face like you're joking. You say it dead serious. Same in interviewing people. You say something goofy, you say it seriously. And then I'd say he was a horse jockey, and my other one was, what was my other one? Did I tell you?
It was, yeah, you said that the igloo.
Oh yeah. So people come up, hey, where you guys going fishing? We're in there drinking beers, having fun, talking about, hey, where you guys going fishing? And Chris would sit there, and he was great. He was brilliant. Following along. I go, we work for the Igloo Company. Igloo, yeah, we sell ice. And we travel the world selling ice, and we got to go down to Loose and Change. We're going to Dutch Harbor, and we're going to sell ice. And they're like, oh my God, what, they don't have any ice? They don't have ice like we have ice. We got our ice, we're like 4x4 squares. They're perfectly square. They fit in your glass correctly. And just say stupid stuff. It's just stupid. And because you can't say, what you're really doing.
Right.
And so if you talk stupid, most normal men are like, okay, I'm not talking to this guy anymore. And, they wander off.
Yeah.
Like, beat it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing.
Tell me about the family dead in Toledo.
Oh, short version.
Okay.
I get called out and go to this case. And they're like, hey, Bruce, you got to go up there. And so when these cases and calls happen, it's like at the most random, most ridiculous times ever. And you got things going on with family and friends and stuff like that. You always have something going on. They don't call you on normal times. So I don't remember what I was doing, but a lot of times I'd make a guy come pick me up. And it was another detective. I hate driving because as a deputy, you drove 10, 12 hours a day. I always liked the driver, because I can, sleep a little bit. I didn't have to worry about it. Get me there. And so we're there at this, pull up this house, 2-story, big ass house, like a farmhouse on property. And I walk up to the front door and I look over and I see a dead dog. I'm like, what is going on, man? Why is that dog dead? And I'm like, why is it so quiet around here? It's on the farm, so I expect to hear animals. So I'm like, I'm not going through the front door yet. So I walk around, dead cat, dead dog, chickens, dead. I'm like, whoa, this is not good. This is weird. And I go through the front door and I walk in and a lot of times you see when I'm looking and I'm looking around because that's me thinking. And that's a good thing when you're interviewing people. If they're lying, they're looking one way, and they're thinking, they're looking another way. And so when I walk in, I'm like, okay. I go up to I see a young man, look like a teenager, in the fetal position, bent over, look like he's playing a video game, dead on the floor. I go upstairs, and I find 2 people dead in bed. And I'm like, oh boy, this is not good. This is not good for business. And really what came out, I don't know why or what happened, but the wife shoots the autistic young man who's playing the video game, kills him. Actually, I think really honestly, kills the husband when he's in bed sleeping, kills the kid, goes out, shoots all the animals on the property, shoots herself in the house. And when this happens, this ain't like a 2-hour gig. This is hours, days dealing with this because you don't know what's happening.
Right.
And there's really no one to interview but for me. And so it's all about documentation and photographs and everything else. I get asked a lot of questions about a certain case in 1998. And what do you think about it? Well, they took 26 photographs. When we did photographs, it was thousands. Every angle, every single thing you can think of. Because you never know. Just like that one case I told you about the walls inside the bedroom, everything else. Mm-hmm. You don't know later in life. And I never wanted to be what happened to this.
Yeah.
And so that was a very, very strange one. And I don't know. I could probably go on all these weirdo ones. I actually like some of the funny things in law enforcement and some of the goofy stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's so negative. And so there's so much negativity in law enforcement and doing this job and what it does to affect your family and your life and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you live this lifestyle and you do it, people really don't understand how freaking gross nasty. Picking up ears on the railroad track. And there's been times, dumb stuff, where I show up and I had this man, he was in a tractor and he was taking dynamite out. And he dynamite in his tractor and it blows up and he goes up in the trees. So I'm there and I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. This is weird. Where is he? And I get hit in the head with blood, skinny stuff. And I look up and the tree is covered with crazy. Well, you can't just leave the tree with all this body part weird stuff up there. It's just not good for business. People are not going to understand this. Why? I'm not the fire department. I don't have a fire hose. So you got to call the fire guys out. They're freaked out. They got to spray this stuff out.
Yeah.
But it's dynamite, and dynamite's a pretty common thing back here because they used to log with it and they used to do roads with it. And if you're building a logging road, they would use dynamite to blow the rock and all that other stuff. And why this man thought it was a good idea to put it in there. When it's older, it's more brittle, and so when they're messing around on that tractor, it hit a bump and it took them with it. A case of it or something. I don't know. It must have been horrible. But I mean, we're talking railroad. Any way there is to die, I probably dealt with it.
How did you deal with all of that? You're dealing with homicides. You're dealing with all this horrible stuff. How did you personally? You have a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
How'd you deal with it?
I think a lot of times, and I got mad. I'm pretty silly and stuff, but I would never show any silly in front of a family or victim's family. And if cops were smiling or clowning around, I would get pissed. I would correct them right away. And, because I was afraid of a family member looking. But these guys got to deal with this all the time. And I think it had a little bit to do with Busch Light, and which I call mountain pop. And there's a lot of mountain pop going on in some of these days. Because you get home, my longest hostage, well, it wasn't a hostage, he was his own hostage, suicidal subject in the house, was 2 days talking to this kid. And it was bad. And I got home, I didn't care what time it was night, I had a Busch Light mountain pop. And I was thinking, why are these people so mean? Why are they so mean to themselves? Why are they so mean to everybody else? Why can't you just all, get along?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that was Reginald Denny, wasn't it? I don't remember. But it was upsetting how horrible people are to another person.
Right.
And, it's a very, and most, I don't care where they work, what small town or wherever, there's negativity. And they have to find an outlet of some sort. And, and I think for me was a personality, enjoying life and everything else. And you have to have vacations. You have to get out of this job or it'll suck you in.
Yeah.
My problem was I got vested. I mean, when I was doing that 10 years of my life on that 185 murder case, it wasn't doing it on work. I didn't have time. I think the last book I read was Where the Red Fern Grows. But that case, I loved reading it. I knew every actor in the script. I worked with them or I saw them before. I knew their names.
Yeah.
So it drew me in. I was energized by it, and I just fascinated with it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I should have told you is I took that. You ever heard of Microsoft OneNote?
Yeah.
We scanned that entire file and we put it in there. So if I said red truck on a computer, it would pop it.
Yeah.
These are scanned. These cops back in the day, they did handwritten reports. It could read the handwritten report and pull up words out of it.
Yeah, OneNote's a good program.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can we get that as a sponsor?
I wish. I wish. Okay, just a couple other things. Just wrapping it up here. But tell me about, first of all, tell the audience who Gary Ridgway is.
Gary Ridgway, Robert Yates of Spokane. Gary Ridgway is the most notorious serial killer in Western Washington, probably the Northwest in the 80s. And he was also known as the Green River Killer.
Okay, and you got to talk with him.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this, I interviewed Gary Ridgway, and he's in prison. So Gary Ridgway is in Walla Walla. And I'm getting ready to interview him, and a good prosecutor is trying to work a deal and trying to get me to talk to him. And the reason why is because we got cold cases. Remember the 8 I was telling you about?
Mm-hmm.
And they, you got prostitutes from Portland to Seattle, and they end up in Lewis County body dumpings. And so I'm like, what the hell? Let's go talk to Gary Ridgway, see if he'll talk to us. And what do you mean you're going to go talk to Gary Ridgway? That's what the bosses say. What do we got to lose? He either tells us he did it or he didn't do it.
Right.
And so what happened was in prison world, they'll switch valuable prisoners, dangerous prisoners, with another prisoner into a different state. In Walla Walla, you got to remember, I don't even remember how many he killed, 70-something prostitutes. And they're in Washington, so those 77 prostitutes probably have family members that are in Walla Walla prison, so they would want to kill him, and it causes a lot of energy. So they sent him to the most impressive prison I've ever been to in my life. And it's called the Supermax in Florence, Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard about it?
Yeah, oh, sure.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's where the Unabomber is.
Yeah. Unabomber, one of the Oklahoma bombers.
Terry Nichols.
Right now, Chapo. El Chapo's there.
Yep.
And another one is, all the crazy, horrible guys.
Right.
And I hate for the voice fluctuation like that because it probably just raises up, and they're like, oh, geez, he scared me. So next thing I know, I find myself flying over. I supposed to went to Walla Walla, and they transferred his butt, and the people are going crazy about it, Washingtonians. Like, he killed all these people. He should be in our prison. He shouldn't be in Colorado. They have no idea that this prison is the most strictest and serious prison. I've been to Walla Walla. Clean, nice facility. I shouldn't identify a prison as nice, but it was clean, professional.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to Walla Walla, it was me, another detective, a prosecutor, and the correction officer. And when you go through these certain areas, green light, red light, and you got to hit these buttons. And what it is they're going to search you if you get the red light. Same if you go in and out of Mexico. We're coming back, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Green light, red light. I get green light. And I'm like, yeah, that's happening every time in Mexico. Green light, red light. The correction officer gets the red light. I stand there and watch this correction officer basically get completely searched. Everything. Everything out of his pockets, everything.
Wow.
Well, you got to remember, where's the contraband come from? It isn't from ding-dongs that are coming in and talk to weirdo inmates. It's truly probably from the inside.
Right.
So when I went to this prison, that was an experience. So when I went to this one, they looked like Marine Corps guards. They look like, JFK, where they walk back and forth, the unknown soldier tomb.
Unknown soldier,
They look just like that. And I'm like, the floors were completely buffed, perfect. And no noises, no nothing. And so I'm like, oh boy, this is serious. And you go in and you go down into the prison. And so my dumb butt, I find myself in this room, and it's huge. And this table is, and I'm like, come on, can we not get a table that's, that's short on one leg? Does anybody have a coaster to put underneath this? I can't talk, and it's going to make these noises. It's Gary Ridgway we're talking to. And the prosecutors are with me, or they know me. And so here comes Gary Ridgway. And I look over, and he's going like this. He's in chains, and he's in leg irons, and he's hobbling over, and he has those birth control glasses on. And the reason why we call them birth control glasses, because back when you were in the Army would give you these glasses that were so big, you're not getting laid. Which is hilarious. You got to make light of this stuff, okay? So give me a break. And so he comes hobbling over, and he sits at the table, and I'm sitting across from him. And the prosecutors, they don't want to be in view. They don't want to be involved. They're just watching. but they're close enough where they can kick me. And I said, "Hi, Mr. Ridgeway. I'd like to talk to you about these murder. You know, I'm so and so from Lewis County. Lewis County. Lewis County." I said, "Yeah, Centralia Shales. You know." "Oh yeah, I know Centralia." "Well, what do you mean you know Centralia?" "Well, I went down to the outlet malls before. I've been to Yardbirds. Remember the word Yardbirds?
Mhm.
I went camping out in Randall. And I'm like, he just named 3 places where 3 bodies were. And I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. And he's talking. You know, you got to remember. And, I'm talking to him. I can't believe he's talking to me. And so, what can I help you with? And when he was coming across at me, I was thinking to myself, no wonder they didn't arrest him. Because when I looked at him, I'm thinking, this dweeb, he killed 72 prostitutes. Prostitutes are mean.
Mm-hmm.
They will beat your ass, and they're tough. And when you look at this man, you're judging a book by a cover.
Mm.
And I always thought my life, I should have talked to him my first year. Don't judge books by covers. Killers are killers.
Yeah.
And this man is, he looked like a dork. I mean, like, he ain't going to get picked for kickball. And Gary, if you're listening to this, do not write me another letter because I'm not going to like it. And actually wrote me 2 letters.
Really?
Yeah, he thinks he's like Hannibal Lecter sending me stupid crap. And so he comes over and talks to him. And what I'm doing is checking personality. I want to understand his personality. And I want to see if he has any. This guy's a weirdo. And in my brain, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if legally I can say he's a weirdo. It's an Italian word. Weirdo's an Italian word for a human being. And so I go, Gary, I understand, you got these scars on your, I think it was right arm. I knew what it was about. He had these crazy scars on his arm. I could see him.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the story, but I wanted to see if he'd tell me. What is that about? No, what would happen is I would have a girl in my car, and he would say something like oral sex or fellatio or something like that. And I would tell her car, and I go, car? What do you mean? Well, they'd put their head up, and that's when he would grab them around the neck and choke them and kill them. You understand what I'm saying here? Are we picturing what we're saying?
Oh, yeah.
And I go, what's this have to do with the scars? Well, she was grabbing on my arm. She was just squeezing, putting her fingernails in my arms. And I mean, it hurt bad. And she's got away. She ran out, and I got out of the car, and I chased her. And for some odd reason, she got to this front porch, and the guy opened the door, and I'm like, I got to go. I got to get out of here. And he gets out of there, and he drives off, and he says that he went to back home, and he's freaking out. And he said that the next day, he's like, what am I going to do? They saw my vehicle. They saw my face, kind of thing. And he takes battery acid and he puts it on the scars. I mean, not scars, the scratches that he got.
Mm-hmm.
And days later, I think it was Des Moines Police Department shows up, and they're talking to him. Well, I always understand why the Des Moines cops, these guys are tough men back then. And they're looking at this guy, and they're like, no way. Not him. No, it's impossible. He's a dork, kind of a thing.
Right.
They're judging book by cover.
Right.
And he has it wrapped. Well, what happened here to your arm, sir? Well, I'm working on this car over here, and I got battery acid. I dumped this battery over there and went on my arm. And he shows him it's all sizzled, crispy up.
Yeah.
And so he tells me that story. And there's a reason why I'm saying this story, because it's stupid. And then the next thing we're talking, and I go, hey, this goes on for 2 days, so there's a lot going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, Gary, the prosecutor I'm with over here, his back's really messed up, and he's in a jam, and we're staying here, and we're from Washington State. Is it possible that you can come over here and get behind him and pop his back for him? Because you got pretty strong arms. And he goes, and then what he does, he's wearing those birth control glasses. He puts his glasses down, and he looks at me and looks at him, and he goes, I don't think I can get my arms around him. And I get kicked on this one. Like, what are you doing? What I'm doing is I'm checking his personality. I want to see how he responds to stupid shit. And he smirked. He thought it was funny. I go, Gary, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get you back to Walla Walla. You want to go back to Walla Walla? Yes, I do. They won't give me fingernails, and they won't give me a Bible, and I can't get a haircut. And then the guy next to me is a weirdo. What the hell? Gary Ridgway just called someone a weirdo? I go, please tell me about the weirdo. He goes, this guy next door, he got me in a lot of trouble. I said, well, what happened? Well, there's stamps, and we need stamps to mail people. I said, you get a lot of mail all day long. For some reason, they get a lot of mail. And so the stamps come to him, and the guy next door is licking the stamps, giving him the stamps. This is like illegal. You're in a federal prison. You're messing around with federal stamps. Next thing you know, he goes, well, here's the other thing. He killed a guy, and he stuck him underneath his bunk. And they had a big roll call looking for the guy. They couldn't find him. And they ended up finding that guy underneath his bunk. This guy had sex with dead people for weeks. And he thinks this guy's a weirdo. My other one that I actually like saying to him, checking personality, nothing unprofessional here, is Unabomber. Basketball with the Unabomber. So Gary, this is on day number 2. Word on the street is the Unabomber wants to play basketball with you. What? Well, I can't get out. They only let us out once. I said, Gary, if you ever get an opportunity with the Unabomber, he can't take you if you go to the left and you jam hard and you lay it up. And he goes, oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I'll ever see him. I never seen him because they're not allowed. They're not out. Next thing you know, he gets back to Walla Walla and he sends me a letter thanking me for getting out. Had nothing to do with me. I just knew they were trying to get him back.
Yeah.
And he said, I cannot talk about another crime that I've committed because they'll kill me. Who's going to kill you, Gary? Pierce County. So Pierce County, he's right. Pierce County would put him in the death penalty is what he knows, and he doesn't want to do it because if you're on death row, it's harder than just being in prison kind of a thing.
Do you think he did it?
I think one of them. I don't know,
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted something from
Yeah.
him. But the interesting thing, the detective that worked on it was, how do I say this? My sister-in-law's brother. And he turned out to be King County Sheriff, and he's the one that interviewed Gary Ridgway back then when he committed all the murders. I mean, he spent a lot of time on this. Him and a lot of other detectives. It wasn't one person, it was tons of them.
Yeah.
And just interesting being able to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
And how he wanted a Bible, because everybody gets religion in prison.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Last couple things. Did law enforcement affect the way that you see people in society?
When you go on vacation, when you do things, for me, you're constantly watching. If you're in Mexico, if you're on in a city or something like that, you're constantly looking and checking things out. And the absolute answer is yes. And if it didn't, you probably shouldn't be in law enforcement because your job is to look for this kind of stuff and see a problem coming so you're aware of it.
Yeah.
And as far as society in general, I mean, this has been going on since the beginning of time.
Right.
It's not uncommon, but more and more, it's more sad how people are horrible to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, all of us are guilty of raising our voice or saying something mean to someone, or losing your temper, or cussing.
Yeah.
But hurting someone, taking someone's life, robbing someone's livelihood, it's just messed up.
Yeah.
And, there's good people, good men and women out there right now that are doing this job to take care of business for all of us.
Right.
And I honestly think that we spend so much time, we go up to this up and down roller coaster. It happened in the 60s, and then hate law enforcement, and then, oh my gosh, we need them. And then it just keeps on happening in our society.
Yeah.
And there's always good ones, and there's always going to be bad ones. That's just any trade in the world, any career.
Looking back on your career, would you have done anything different?
There's one case that I wanted to solve, and I wish I spent a little bit more time. It was another 85 case, and I did DNA and everything else on it. I would never went into the administration, ever. I would have stayed detective sergeant, because that's where I was good at for the community, the county, and everything else.
Yeah.
And I got talked into doing it, and I shouldn't have done it. I do have a regret on that part. Could I go back and do it now? No, I'm too old. It's a young man's game.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah.
I see men or women that I never talked about women's ages, but that it's a young person's game.
Yeah.
You have to have the stamina to be able to do it. I loved the career. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it, but now I get to have fun doing what I'm doing.
Okay, and this is what we're going to end on, because we started with funny and we're going to end on funny. So you are a realtor, but you have shown me numerous YouTube videos that you have created from your realtor business. And I'm going to include a clip here so that the audience can see.
Real estate's probably the toughest business in the world. Very hard. You can't do it part-time. You can't even do it full-time. You got to do it all the time. And I tell you what, I'm going to have a hard time leaving this 2,800 square foot house, 4-bedroom, 3-bath. It's going to be hard for me.
Well, it really won't be hard for you, because the realization is it's not yours.
What do you mean?
It's not your property.
Okay, I'm leaving. If I can get off this horse, I'm out of here.
Go ahead and get off it.
Oh boy. Hey, put the horses up. I'll come back and pick you up, and we'll get some mountain pop.
I don't think so. I'm gonna ride my horse out of here. See ya.
Riggy, get those horses put away. I told you I'm going to the store getting a mountain pop.
Whoa! God, I hate you. I hate you, Bruce. Hey.
How did you come up with that idea?
Well, what happens if you're in law enforcement, no administration is going to allow you to be goofy, and you have to represent an agency. And I always had this personality and fun, and I wanted to do this business of be me, just silly fun and have a good time. I mean, most people that do these kind of interviews are not wearing a dorky tuxedo. They're sweating butter because it's so hot in Washington State right now. Jeez Louise, it's even hot now, don't you think? You're over there wearing boxer shorts. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to get out of this, get back in my chonies. And so I got into this real estate thing, and they're all about, you need to advertise on the radio. You need to do this. I'm like, there's 10,000 people on the radio advertising. No, I'm not doing it. So I get into this video thing, and it's on YouTube and everything else. And I don't know, maybe I think it's funnier than most people, but it's kind of like Cannonball Run versus Every Which Way But Loose up to Airplane. All the movies I loved as a kid. It's just stupid, random marketing. And it's just random. It's silliness.
What's the name of your channel?
I think it's Bruce Kimsey Realtor. And half the time I can't even figure out how to get on it. Which I tell you another thing, in that law enforcement world, you better stay up on social media and how to do it. I saw more cases on social media tracking people down because every idiot, they're always looking for someone. You better find the woman, every time, because they're going to look for mom or they're going to look for the girlfriend. And every time.
Yeah. Sooner
or later, they're going to talk to mom because mom's going to stick up for him. And the girlfriend thinks he's a great guy. And I can find him. But YouTube is Bruce Kimsey, realtor. I think I'm right on that.
I'll
You can verify.
I'll include it. I'll include a link to your channel. I'll include I think the clip today that we were watching was pretty funny, so I'll include a little bit in there.
It's just ridiculous, silly.
It's good though. It's total entertainment.
And I like it because it's fun for me.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've dealt with so much negative. Maybe I wanted a little more comedy in my life.
Yeah.
And silliness instead of all this serious, horrible stuff.
Yeah.
I could go on for hours about horrible crap. I'd rather, and everybody wants to talk to you about it. Everybody you run into, hey, tell me about that 85 murder case. And I'm like, no, I don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You're just done talking about it.
Right.
It's like going through a divorce. And I like this divorce analogy. You're over it when you're done talking about it. You're like, shut up. I don't want to talk about it anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in the beginning, you tell everybody you run across. You'll talk to the espresso staff girl. You'll talk to the barber. You'll talk to after a while. You're like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's venting. It's really self-counseling is why people do that.
Yeah.
And so I think this was a wonderful time. I don't know. I don't think I've been up this late in my entire life. What time is it?
Well, it's 11:10.
Oh my goodness! I'm normally in bed by 8:30.
Okay, well there you go. Bruce, really appreciate the interview. It was great. Thank you very much. It was everything that I expected it to be.
Oh well, I appreciate it, and I had a great time.
Thank you.